what we have been doing as ITUC. So in order to do that, I think a premise as this is a public webinar of the ITUC is really first simple but essential question, that is why the ITUC engages with the United Nations as a start. So when we, and we hear a lot talking about the United Nations these days because of the systemic attack to multilateralism that we are experiencing, especially from very powerful governments, such as the speech given by Donald Trump at the General Assembly a couple of weeks ago. So the United Nations is nothing but the sum of our states, and that's why it is important, because we have our own representatives participating to a global space that is meant to find global solutions to global challenges. We live in a globalized world, and we have most of the challenges that our societies and our workers face are interconnected, and most of them now come from beyond the national level, so that the solutions need to be found in a multilateral space, from peace to development, climate, finance. And that's why the ITUC, since its constitution, is committed to not only defend the United Nations as the most democratic space to find those solutions to global challenges, but also to uphold it. That does not mean the United Nations is perfect, but that means that we are really trying to make the most of a space that is, as I said, the most inclusive we have and the most democratic, while we enhance its accountability. So having said that, today we are focusing our attention on a summit that will take place in 3 weeks in Qatar. I saw that Juan Somavia is among our participants, and it's an honor to have him, as he was behind the preparation of the Copenhagen summit in 1985. So I feel like it's kind of delicate for me to speak now on Copenhagen, but still I will do my best. So the Doha summit is now celebrating the 30th anniversary of the first World Summit for Social Development, celebrated in 1995 in Copenhagen, that set really the agenda on global issues related to social development, from poverty eradication, inequalities, but also full employment and social inclusion. Now, obviously, 30 years after, the context is very different from the geopolitical context that I've referred to before, but also in terms of trust among member states that interact in the context of the United Nations. And also the context is different in terms of what the UN has been building. So obviously, one among many agendas, the 2030 agenda that has been adopted in 2015 with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, that's the most advanced agenda that we have as a planet on sustainable development. That was not there in 1995. So what this summit happening in Qatar in 3 weeks aims to achieve is really, first of all, to reaffirm the 2030 agenda and to accelerate action on the SDGs with a focus on 3 topics. First one, poverty eradication. Second, full employment and decent work. And third, social integration. And in terms of procedure, the outcome, the official outcome of the summit will be a political declaration. So obviously, the ITUC considers this agenda on social development as a key priority. So this summit has been prepared at the level of the General Council of the ITUC, and we have been pushing for key priorities. First of all, the nexus between social development and social justice, that is also at the core of the mandate of the ILO, but is at the core of our concept of a new social contract, peace and democracy. So this webinar is part of our For Democracy campaign. And I will share with you afterwards that we did it. We now have democracy in the final outcome of Doha, but this has been a terrible fight to say we cannot have social development without democracy. And we cannot look at social development if not through the lenses of social justice and in a peaceful environment. 2, promotion of a new social contract. You know this concept by heart, I guess. This is the mandate of the ITUC, the call for a new social contract that has 6 pillars: jobs, rights, social protection, wages and living wages, equality and inclusion, but also financing. So there are no good policies, they're not backed by budget, by adequate and sustainable financing. Number 4, the recognition of social dialogue and the role of social partners. This discussion, this summit is not an ILO discussion. So social dialogue is obvious within the context of the ILO. I'm not saying it is easy, but it's one of the 4 pillars of the ILO decent work agenda. The context is very different when you negotiate in the context of the United Nations, when you have to keep explaining what social dialogue is, why social partners are important, and they are different from other actors in society. And this has been a very, very big element of our advocacy. Number 5, the leading role of the ILO. Obviously, one of the 3 themes, as I said, is full employment and decent work. The ILO is the only tripartite agency that has full employment and decent work at the core of its mandate, and 6, policy coherence among UN processes. There are many UN processes, many of them linked to social development. We have been saying Doha cannot be a silo. We need to leverage all the victories that we have been having in the UN on social development and reaffirm them in Doha. We cannot restart from scratch every time. This year, we had several important negotiations. One example is the Beijing Plus 30 declaration that is on gender equality, and that was March. And one concrete fight of the I2C has been to say we had several issues for women in the world of work recognized there. It was March. It's still the UN, it's still New York, it's still the same government. We cannot restart from scratch. We have to take all those victories and reaffirm them in Doha. It sounds very reasonable, but again, is not as easy as it sounds. So how we proceed in terms of how we moved in the negotiation, and actually the speakers that we will listen to have been part and parcel of that in different ways. So as I said, we set our priorities, and when I say we, I mean our General Council, priorities well built with all our affiliates, and all our affiliates were asked to get in contact, to engage with their governments, to say this is what we want to see as an outcome of Doha. This is what we mean by social development, and we count on you and we call on you to reflect that vision. We have also, obviously, as always, worked hand in hand with the ILO, with other UN agencies, with coalitions of governments, with social movements, like-minded social movements. And we have also had a specific process within the ILO where a resolution was adopted last June at the conference, setting the list of priorities, tripartite priorities coming out of the conference for the summit. So I will give you a very short sense of what we have in the declaration. I'm not making justice to the declaration. I have, I think 3 minutes left, and our speakers will refer to that, and we will share the link in the chat. But in terms of negotiation, the negotiation is over. The declaration has been agreed upon last month, and we are quite happy about the result. Again, considering the context, the negotiations have been taking place. That is a context where, for example, the United States, coming back to a very powerful government, has been saying that they don't want to see any reference to human rights, gender equality, SDGs. So that's the level of the confrontation when it comes to the multilateral negotiation of this summit, and not only, obviously, but that's a geopolitical context. All these negotiations are taking place. So in general, we see that this declaration, first of all, reaffirms the SDGs, should be obvious, but again, it wasn't obvious. Called for a renewed multilateralism, so more rather than less multilateralism, recognizes the link between democracy and social development. That's what I mentioned before. That was not obvious at all to say that we cannot advance on social development if we don't have democratic institutions and democratic decision-making processes. And it sets a solid follow-up process through a specific commission that will meet every year in February, and that will follow up and will look at what governments have been doing to implement the text of the declaration. On labor priorities, very general overview, we got the role of social partners, we got references to fundamental principles and rights at work, freedom of association, collective bargaining, social dialogue, living wages, according to a definition now we have at the ILO, universal social protection, including the extension of social protection by 2% per year. And last but not least, on gender equality, as I said, we had a very important discussion 7 months ago in March at in New York, UN discussion, so-called the Commission on the Status of Women. We had many victories as a trade union movement, and we really wanted to see them reflected in this document. And we can see language on investments in the care economy, care workers' rights, equal pay for work of equal value, gender-based violence and harassment in the world of work. So, as I said, I'm summarizing a very big declaration in 3 slides, but this is for you to have a sense. There are obviously also elements that are missing. We would have liked to see better language on migration, more explicit language on rights for workers in the platform economy. So there are several issues where obviously the negotiation didn't go the way we wanted, but in summary, we can see that a lot of our asks are now reflected in the declaration. So what will happen in Doha is that we will have a delegation there. We will organize and lead side events, specifically one on labor migration and the other one on women's labor rights. We will partner with like-minded governments, UN agencies in events and initiatives. And then the point will be the follow-up. So our position on these summits is that they're not an end, they shouldn't be an end in themselves. They are a means for us to push for change at the national level. And I'm sure that our speakers will talk about that, on how they use the national spaces to get victories at the UN, but for especially for those victories to come back and produce concrete change at the national level. So this is what I wanted to share, and you have my email there. I will also put it in the chat. Obviously, it's not just me. We are a very big team working on that. But that's all I wanted to share, and happy to discuss with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giulia, for setting the scene so clearly and so powerfully. Of course, the declaration is already shared. As you mentioned, it's already published last month. Doha Summit will be again a space for reaffirming the powerful position and achievement of our trade union movement, reaffirming the need for a new social contract with all its pillars you already mentioned. We will now move to our first round of interventions, guided by a question, which is, why is this summit important for you and for those are concerned? I'm honored to have with us today our sisters and brothers from the region, ITUC region. We have with us Sister Zingwa Lucy, the president of COSATU, South Africa. Brother Felix Ovejero, Deputy Secretary for International Affairs of Cooperation, CCOO, Spain. Brother Yugandhra Konwar, President of ITUC Nepal. And Sister Soiban Vipdon, Executive Vice President of the Canadian Labour Congress, and apologize if I pronounce the noun wrong. So for each speaker, we'll answer our question, and we'll have 5 minutes to answer. So let's begin with Sister Lucy.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Zingizwa is having a technical issue, so I would suggest moving to Felix, and I will let you know once she's in. Thank you.
Okay. So, Brother Felix, floor is yours.
Muchas gracias por la invitación a la CSI. Muchas gracias también agradecer en la celebración de este seminario en el Día Internacional para el Trabajo Decente. Yo creo que tenemos que tener siempre en mente el trabajo decente, el trabajo internacional y el trabajo nacional local. Yo quería señalar cuatro presupuestos que tenemos que tener en cuenta para participar en estos espacios. Son ideas estratégicas que tenemos que llevar a los planes de acción de las organizaciones sindicales en los niveles que nos movemos. Uno es tener un movimiento sindical internacional fuerte y que acierte las decisiones y sea participativo. Que el desarrollo sostenible, la financiación para el desarrollo se haya tratado en los niveles más altos de dirección de la Confederación Sindical Internacional lanza un mensaje muy claro tanto a las instituciones internacionales como a los gobiernos, como a las afiliadas, haciéndonos un llamamiento a ser proactivos en este tema. Este es un presupuesto muy claro. Y señalaba a Julia 1995. En 1995 no existía la Confederación Sindical Internacional, nace en el 2006. Estábamos en una situación de posguerra fría donde también todo se empezaba a mover. Ahora estamos en un enfrentamiento muy duro con una extrema derecha que coge diferentes formas en las partes del mundo. Segunda idea, el mundo del trabajo tiene que estar en el centro del desarrollo social. Somos actores sociopolíticos y tenemos que tener esa consideración nosotros mismos. Tenemos que querer participar en la definición de las políticas públicas, no solo del empleo, que promueven un desarrollo social equitativo y nos tienen que reconocer. Y nos tienen que reconocer. Y para eso es muy relevante la construcción de mayorías sociales. Participar en la construcción de mayorías sociales que nos permitan ser actor y dialogar con los gobiernos que son al final los que toman las decisiones de política que influyen en los derechos de trabajadores y trabajadoras. Por eso, desde Comisiones Obreras, y otro concepto muy relevante que quería señalar es la unidad de las organizaciones sindicales, respetando el pluralismo y las diferentes culturas sindicales. Es muy relevante trabajar en unidad. Nosotros esto lo hemos trabajado en unidad con la Unión General de Trabajadores de España, porque no podemos hacerlo de otra manera en estos momentos donde incluso se nos cuestiona la propia existencia. Y establecimos un diálogo con el Gobierno de España desde la Cumbre de Financiación para el Desarrollo que se celebró en julio de este año en Sevilla. Y el proceso de elaboración de políticas de Naciones Unidas finalizaría en Qatar en noviembre con la agenda, ¿no? También es la primera vez que se discute primero la financiación del desarrollo y luego pasamos a la discusión de las prioridades políticas, que también es muy relevante. Y establecimos un diálogo con el gobierno, con las propuestas elaboradas por la UGT, por comisiones obreras, en el marco de la Confederación Sindical Internacional. Y lanzo otra idea también muy relevante, no podíamos hacerlo solos. Y aquí establecimos alianzas. Las alianzas en estos momentos siempre son importantes, pero en estos momentos donde se cuestiona todo lo que hemos logrado en muchos años de lucha, de movilizaciones y de negociaciones, nos dimos cuenta que no podemos hacerlo solo. Y establecimos alianzas con una plataforma que recoge en España las principales organizaciones sociales, desde el movimiento feminista, movimiento ecologista, organizaciones de desarrollo, estamos claramente las organizaciones sindicales y las organizaciones de paz. Porque nos dimos cuenta que si íbamos con los mismos mensajes, que si éramos capaces de introducir el mundo del trabajo en las agendas de otras organizaciones, íbamos a ser más fuertes. Y creo que lo logramos en diálogo con el gobierno y también reconocer la apuesta del gobierno de España de reconocimiento de la importancia de la participación de la sociedad civil en estos debates y en las decisiones. Creo que lo conseguimos. Tuvimos una muy buena presencia en Sevilla, liderada por, como no podía ser de otra forma, por la Confederación Sindical Internacional, y estuvo el secretario general Luc Triangle, que significa que esto es una prioridad para la Organización Internacional de los Sindicatos, la mayor organización del mundo. Hubo una participación sindical española muy interesante e influimos en la toma de decisiones. En un momento donde hay un estrechamiento de la participación de los espacios de sociedad civil en los diferentes niveles, en los niveles internacionales, en los niveles regionales y en los niveles nacionales. Y esto se dio en la cumbre de Sevilla con la celebración de manera oficial de un foro empresarial que estaba en la agenda de la propia cumbre. Como sindicatos pedimos y al final conseguimos que con otras organizaciones se pudiera celebrar un foro de sociedad civil que no estaba previsto, donde pudimos exponer los planteamientos diferentes de los diferentes tipos de organizaciones que componemos la sociedad civil a nivel internacional. Por eso hemos participado comisiones y por eso tanto la Unión General de Trabajadores como Comisiones Obreras vamos a formar parte, hemos logrado formar parte de la delegación oficial gubernamental de España para la cumbre de Doha, que es también muy relevante. Los sindicatos tenemos que estar en los espacios donde se deciden las políticas públicas. Estas son las cuestiones principales que quería señalar en esta primera intervención. Son conceptos que tenemos que desarrollar. Creo que lo complicado es bajar estas agendas internacionales negociadas y participadas por el movimiento sindical al ámbito regional. Creo que en Europa lo estamos consiguiendo. Y lo más difícil es llevarlas al ámbito local. El desarrollo de todo el discurso que se construye a nivel internacional en políticas públicas, en políticas privadas que mejoren las condiciones laborales y de vida de millones de personas que sufren pobreza, que sufren desigualdad y que sufren marginación porque no están dentro de las élites que existen en nuestros países. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Phyllis. It seems that our colleague is back. Can we have...
Yeah, I think Zingizwa is there. Sister Zingizwa, can you try your microphone?
Can you
so
have
that we
Zikwa
see?
with us? Are you there, Zikwa? I can't see you. No.
I will follow up with her. She's clearly having technical issues, but we
Yeah.
can move on to
We can
Shivon
move
and
on to
Jitendra.
Brother Yugandhra Konwar from Nepal. Please, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sister. Thank you, sister. On behalf of ITUC NEC, Nepal, I am going to respond question number 1 regarding All Social Summit. Namaste and warm greetings from Nepal. It's an honor to join this important discussion under the theme for democracy that delivers social justice and prosperity for all. This summit is crucial for us in Nepal because our democracy, while politically vibrant, is still struggling to deliver economic and social justice for working people. For ITUC NEC, this summit reinforces that democracy is not only about elections. It must deliver economic and social justice in Nepal. Workers demand a democracy that ensures living wages, job security, and dignity at work, not just formal political rights. Let me share why these conversations matters deeply for ITC NAC Nepal and for the workers we represent. First is the existing inequality and social protection in labor market. Despite democratic progress, income and opportunity gaps are widening. Informal and gig workers, who make up over 80% of Nepal's labor force, still lack social protections, fair wages, and representation. The social protection gap is massive, although Nepal's social security funds has started to expand coverage. Only around 10% of workers are actually enrolled. This gap reflects a structural inequality between formal and informal workers that democracy must urgently address it. Secondly, the increasing number of unemployment, migration, and the new phase of inequality. Youth employment is another crucial issue. Nepal's official unemployment rate among youth remains above 19%, and underemployment is far higher. Every day, around 700 young Nepalese leave the country for foreign employment, searching for livelihoods that their own democracy has failed to provide. Our economy is now heavily dependent on remittance, which contributes nearly 25% of our GDP. But this dependence has created a fragile where the nation survives on the sacrifices of its migrant workers rather than creating jobs at home. The migration trend has led to new vulnerabilities, forced labor, and human trafficking. Many migrant workers, especially young women and men from rural areas, are exploited through deceptive recruitment, unpaid wages, and unsafe conditions within Nepal too. Bonded labor practices, through legally abolished, still persist in disguised forms such as halaya, kamaya, and camelary systems. Social justice cannot tolerate such exploitation of human dignity. We are witnessing growing frustration among young people, the Generation Z, who feel excluded from economic opportunities. The recent protests reflected our demand for genuine democracy that not only gives them the rights to vote, but the right to work, on and live with dignity in their own country. Three, another area is the shift in technology and job insecurity. The rapid technological transformation, including automation and digital platforms, has created new job opportunity, but also uncertainty. Platform or gig workers like e-riders, delivery workers, and freelancers in Nepal face precarious work without labor rights. We must ensure technology serves workers, not replace or exploits them. Fourth, at the same time, environmental stress and climate change is hitting workers hardest. Nepal ranks among the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. This is why climate justice and just transition are central to agenda. When we talk about green economy, we must ensure that workers from fossil fuel, transport, and traditional sectors are not left behind. They need reskilling, retraining, and social protection. Green transition must be a just transition, one that returns and re-employs affected workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Flexi, for this powerful intervention. Before giving, I don't know if our sister is back and she settled her technical issues. Manuel, I will again to let our participant follow again with this discussion. I will say the question why this summer is important for you and for the workers you represent. This we are waiting two other sisters to answer this question. I don't know if
Yes,
Lucy
Gizwa
is
is there.
Yeah,
Now we see her.
yours is yours, Lucy.
Well, thank you very much and good afternoon to all the colleagues. My apologies for the issues in technologies on this side. In answering this question, on behalf of Congress of South African Trade Unions, we indeed believe that the World Summit on Sustainable Development is important for workers across the world. But critically, it is important for workers in South Africa for many reasons. For us as workers in South Africa, it is about the ability of workers to earn a wages. It is about the ability of workers to remain employed. It is about the ability of a worker to be able to support their families. For us, it is about the ability of companies to continue to sell their goods and pay their staff decent wages. For us, it is also about the sustainability of the value chains and the economies. It is also about the impact upon communities that are at risk. And so, the first for us is the battle to find work and remain employed. And South Africa has a 42.9% and a youth unemployment rate that exceeds 60%. We have seen many companies retrenching workers. Others have closed down. We are also facing in South Africa a crisis of long-term and even permanent unemployment for millions of people in our country. So we cannot afford, as workers in South Africa, in this scenario, to see more workers losing their jobs. And for us, there is a real danger of seeing more jobs being lost as the energy transition occurs. So we think that there is a real push for nations to move away from coal and carbon-intensive energy generation due to climate change. Now, the challenge that we are faced with as workers in South Africa is that we have more than 72,000 jobs that are linked to the coal sector. And many of these are concentrated in the Mpumalanga and Limpopo provinces in our country. And also for us, this shift not only is going to be affecting mining and energy jobs, but in fact, it is going to be affecting the entire value chain, as we've said. Also, moderator, the European Union will be imposing to the South, South Africa in particular, carbon taxes on the imports to their markets. And for us, this poses a real challenge to South African jobs as the EU is our largest export market. You would also have an appreciation of the tariffs that we have been slapped with of 30%. There is also a danger to communities who are witnessing, especially in small rural towns, companies that are closing down. So this risk in South Africa is creating ghost towns, and it's plunging already impoverished communities further into poverty and despair. And simultaneously, it is workers and the working class whose health is most at risk due to the high levels of pollution at their workplaces, be it in the mines and in the factories. So it is workers also whose health is deteriorating, who can't afford medical care, who are medically boarded or retrenched due to ill health, and who die prematurely as a result of this. It is also, the reality is for us that it is also the working class communities who are at risk due to water shortages, due to floods, due to fires, and food shortages, including the urban migration, people moving from the rural to urban. And therefore, for us, it is precisely for this reason that the transition for us must be just and must place workers first. And this is a battle we dare not run away from, and we want to say, from nor do we have to accept defeat on this. So for us, we want to say that this summit for us is so important for workers and the communities that are directly affected by high levels of unemployment, but also by levels of poverty that are rising. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you very much. We will move now to Sister Siobhan. And again, why this summit is important for you as a Canadian Labour Congress and for the workers you represent.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this great discussion. I think it's, from Canada, and as I said, my name is Siobhan, and for us, this is definitely a priority, especially when we talk about it in the frame of democracy, because it's important that workers, and our unions are present, they're visible, we're vocal in every place that decisions are being made, right? And that means in the workplaces, that means in our communities, it means in our, governments in our own countries, and it definitely means in these multilateral institutions and places on the globe, so that we can not only support each other, because all the panelists have brought up issues that are important to us as well in Canada, but trade unions, we are so important, in terms of development actors and advancing the goals of the sustainable development. So representing working people and advocating for international development, that really strives for decent work for all, is absolutely a key principle when we talk about lifting people out of poverty, diminishing inequality, and promoting social justice. And trade unions are absolutely vital to this work. And so we have to be included in the strategy formation, in the policy making, and the implementation of these development projects to ensure that they are centered around workers and people and our communities. So when, we see governments are coming together to decide, what commitments they're prepared to make and address, what commitments they're willing to fund and follow through on, in order to in order to face the challenges, in our world, whether it is, our climate change, whether it is the transition of jobs when we talk about peace, and what it means when we talk about the care economy and formalization of workplaces and the technology changes. That is our job as union folks, is to be there so that access to decent work is at the heart of economic and social justice. And I know labor rights are absolutely fundamental to achieve this. And, we know that we cannot meet these goals without the right to organize and bargain collectively. And so for us, that is making it so that it is so very, very important. It also is in the context globally where, multilateral systems are under attack, right? Particularly by authoritarian governments. And we don't, we don't want these kinds of checks and balances that these institutions provide, whether it's the UN, the ILO, and things like, the Commission on the Status of Women or the World Summit on the, social development to disappear and not be supported. And so that's why we want to make sure that we're always participating and supporting the global trade union movement to be there. We're seeing this move globally about the rise of the right, and it is so very much being fueled by disinformation, misinformation, and these tools that are being used by the ultra right undermine our rights that have been fought for. They've been hard to win, and quite honestly, they're hard to maintain in this reality. So, as the Canadian Labour Congress, we participate in these different, whether it's at the ILO, we participate at the Commission on the Status of Women. We absolutely think that this is important because we know that our best bet in pushing back on that is having strong trade unions, being connected in the international movement, and also making sure that we are not allowing the rollback of progressive language that has been won, whether in all of these institutions that we share to look at. And because we need to keep language on labor rights, collective bargaining, equal pay for work of equal value, the idea of public services, and the well established principles in these agreements. And for us, each year, I am fortunate to lead the Canadian delegation that goes to the Commission on the Status of Women, and there is a pushback on gender equality every time. And they wanted to remove the word gender from a document about the status of women, and I laugh because it's ridiculous, but I also I'm concerned because this is about this undermining these rights and things that we have been fighting for. So we need to stand with our allies, bring workers voices to the table. The Commission on the Status of Women, we make sure women's voices are at the table because we really cannot risk losing that. We cannot allow, the ultra-right and the ultra-rich to set the agenda, to rig the system against the interest of workers and, the most vulnerable. So we need to keep pushing forward, and the World Summit on the, social development is a big part of that. And so I'm glad that the ITUC is leading us in this work, and we're very happy to be a part of it as we prioritize workers, our communities, and equity in this work. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for you and for all our speakers for this powerful reflection. It shows how from every corner in the World Trade Union voice rose in unity, powerful, determined, and clear. All your words remind us that the fight for social justice knows no borders. It resonates in every factory, every digital platform you mention, every field and every home where workers demand fairness, dignity, and hope. We now move to our second round of intervention with another interesting question. What win have we achieved so far for all our speakers, and what must government deliver in Doha and afterwards? I think we'll go back to the and keep the same speakers orders. I will go again to Lucy if she is still online and before she has any other technical issues. I don't know, Lucy, if you are here.
Thank you so much. I'm here.
Both is yours.
Thank you so much. And appreciate for starting with me before really I get other glitches. So the question is, what wins have we had so far, and what governments must deliver in Doha afterwards? Look, for us, we think there are three important wins that we have managed to achieve to date as workers. First, it is the recognition that the transition, which is inevitable, must be a just transition. It must be about the interest of workers, the communities must be at the heart of that transition. The second for us is that workers and communities must have a seat at the table where decisions that affect them are being made. That also their voices are heard and their needs are addressed. And for us, this includes the decision for organized labor to play a central role in such engagements. And the third one is the recognition that the industrialized North must play its part in repairing the damage done to the planet and also to assist the developing world in its transition. So for us, these demands are the products of the working class struggle, in particular, the demands of organized labor across the world on this issue. Now, the challenges that are all too often seen is are the progressive commitments that are little more than nice English words. So we do hear the commitments being made. We do hear people acknowledging the need for workers to be part of a process. But at times it lacks the will to implement and those. So for us, the transition is all too often not just. I think that's why for us it is important that we are at the table and not on the table. We're also seeing companies retrenching workers and abandoning host communities as they seek to achieve less carbon-intensive methods. But critical and important, we are also seeing value chains and the jobs that are at risk as businesses and economies seek to shift away from less carbon-intensive methods. So also what we have seen is the employers not giving the required skills to workers or finding alternative employment. And so they do to also communities that are affected by the transition itself. So the development financing for us for this transition, whilst well-intentioned, we think that its purpose is at risk. Firstly, what we have seen and we have experienced is that we are seeing more loans than grants, and most of it is in dollars or euros. And also the fact that the nations now are further indebted. So no matter how low the interest is in terms of what you must pay back, the fact that that loan is dominated in dollar or euro, it means that those countries, particularly the global south, will continue to struggle to pay the debt as their currencies continue to depreciate. So for us, the World Summit in Doha must be able to ensure that workers are part of the process, and also that what we see, we want to see that when we go there, it is in a form of a tripartite. As we say that we must be part of the conversations. Because we think that if we fail to have workers at the table, but also part of the entire process, we would have failed any process of transition. And I speak from the point of the South African workers and its communities that are dealing with high levels of unemployment, in particular with young people. So for us, we think that the summit must be able to respond to these challenges decisively, and also the trade union movement must not be left behind. What then the fundamental wins that we have managed to do, in particular in South African context, is to ensure that in the processes here domestically at home, we are part of a process, that we are also part of a process that speaks to the transition at the policy level in many aspects where legislation is being formed here at home. We are participating as organized labor, but also we're shaping the policy discourse that no policy will be passed through parliament without the voice of workers. And we think that for us, we must be able to take this as what we have won towards these national summits so that the voice of workers remains on all matters that are affecting workers, be it on energy or including issues on gender discussions. We think that what we have won here at home must find expression in the international forums that we are part of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy, for this interesting message and intervention. I will move now to Brother Felix. Brother Felix, floor
Muchas
is yours.
gracias.
Yes, yeah.
La pregunta es que hemos conseguido mucho y por eso nos lo quieren quitar. Y por eso el enfrentamiento de las extremas derechas, de las derechas extremas hacia el sindicato, hacia la organización sindical es tan brutal. Somos las primeras víctimas de los conflictos y de lo que quieren los supermillonarios y unas élites que ahora dicen que no gobiernan. Y tenemos que pensar en lo que ganamos y por qué ganamos. Hay opciones políticas y Trump es el representante más salvaje que quiere romper las Naciones Unidas. Quiere romper las Naciones Unidas porque en la OIT a nivel internacional es en el primer espacio donde se dice que la paz, solo es posible la paz en el mundo con justicia social. Y eso lo tenemos que tener en cuenta, porque la OIT no nace de un deseo de 3 o 4 personas que dicen vamos a mejorar el mundo, nace en un tratado de paz después de una guerra devastadora en Europa que tuvo consecuencias a nivel internacional. Por eso algunos quieren romper el sistema multilateral, que es necesario reformar, por supuesto. Quieren romper la democracia, porque en democracia es donde la clase trabajadora, los trabajadores y trabajadoras conseguimos derechos, porque somos más y en la democracia mandan las mayorías. Por eso es relevante lo que señalaba en mi primera intervención de construir mayorías sociales que promuevan un desarrollo inclusivo y sostenible. Creamos herramientas de solidaridad y los primeros fueron las organizaciones de trabajadoras y trabajadores y por eso están en contra de la cooperación internacional para el desarrollo. No quieren la financiación, no quieren la solidaridad. Se han beneficiado estas élites del comercio sin normas. Por eso ahora dan un apretón y es el comercio de fuerza. Por eso nosotros tenemos que hablar muy claro del comercio internacional con normas. Porque al final el propósito de nuestras organizaciones es la universalidad de los derechos laborales y un modelo global de desarrollo justo. Se señalaba el pago de la deuda, las transiciones justas. Son retos que como sociedades tenemos que intervenir. Y esto, la defensa de estos planteamientos que se alinean con los intereses sindicales, están recogidos en la declaración. Luego los vamos a tener que poner en marcha. Y no es casualidad que la declaración y el plan de acción de Copenhague de hace 30 años esté en vigor, porque hemos conseguido muchas cuestiones, pero nos quedan muchas más. Reconoce el papel de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, que no es ninguna panacea, pero es una guía de políticas públicas para un desarrollo sostenible e inclusivo. ¿Y qué pedimos en la cumbre? Yo creo que se han recogido desde los diferentes espacios que hemos intervenido en este panel. Pedimos garantizar el trabajo decente y los derechos laborales universales. Universales, y esto es fundamental. Garantizar una transición justa, y se señalaban los problemas que tienen países donde la extracción de petróleo o de carbón es una base de empleo muy importante. Se señalaba también, tenemos que promover la igualdad de género y la inclusión. Esto es fundamental porque uno de los sectores de población más atacados por estas extremas derechas es la mujer y los derechos que ha conseguido en los últimos años. Tenemos que reformar la gobernanza económica mundial y aquí la deuda y la fiscalidad son fundamentales para tener un modelo de desarrollo justo. Y tenemos que fortalecer y luchar por la democracia, el diálogo social y la negociación colectiva. Esto no lo quieren quitar. Esto está recogido en la declaración que se aprobará en Doha. Y esto es lo que tenemos que dar el seguimiento y reitero también la dificultad que a veces tenemos de trasladar estos discursos, estas declaraciones a nivel internacional, a nivel estatal y a nivel local, que es donde las personas ven si les benefician unas políticas o no. La justicia social, globalización de derechos y un modelo de desarrollo internacional mucho más justo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Brother Felix, for your thoughts and sharing your thoughts. I will move to our brother from Nepal and ask him what win have we achieved so far in Nepal and what must government delivery in Doha and afterwards. Please.
Thank you, sister. In second round, talking about the win so far in Nepal. First, recognition of Decent Oak agenda in national level policies. Nepal has officially aligned its national labor and employment policies with the ILO's Decent Oak agenda, which emphasize 4 strategic pillars: employment creation, workers' rights, social protection, and social dialogue. The National Employment Policy 2019 and the Labor Act 2017 explicitly integrate these principles, committing to productive employment, fair income, workplace security, and equal opportunities. Second, the 15th Five-Year Plan 2019 to 24 also highlights full and productive employment with decent work as a core national goal. Nepal's Labor and Employment Policy 2022 further strengthens the focus on fair wages, occupational safety and health, and gender equality in labor markets. These recognitions institutionalize the Decent Work agenda, ensuring the workers' issues are not treated as charity but as constitutional and policy priorities. Second, expansion of the Social Security Fund (SSF). The Contribution-Based Social Security Act 2017 established the Social Security Fund (SSF), a landmark achievement that operationalized the right to social protections guaranteed under Article 43 of the Constitution of Nepal 2015. The SSF currently covers about 600,000 workers as of 2025, mostly from the formal private sector, but is gradually expanding in informal and migrant workers through voluntary schemes. Pilot programs are being developed for domestic and informal workers through coverage is still below 10% of the total labor force. This is a tangible step towards universal social protection and fulfills parts of Nepal's commitments to SDG 1.3, social protection for all, and ILO Convention 102. Third, strengthen the trade union unity and social dialogue through ITUC-NAG. The creation and operations of ITUC-NAG, Nepal Affiliated Council, has fostered unprecedented unity among major trade unions centers, including NTUC, GFOND, and ANTUF, around shared agendas of decent work, social justice, and democratic accountability. Trade unions successfully lobbied for provisions in the Labor Act 2017, the guarantee collective bargaining rights, right to strike, and grievance mechanism. We have good dialogue with UN Residential Coordinator with the coordination of JTUCC, Joint Trade Union Coordination Center, and dialogue with delegation of European Union in Nepal with the initiation of NTUC. But we have not yet concrete commitment from them. This unity enhanced the collective voice of workers in the policy making and ensures that trade unions remains a pillar of democratic governance. For ratification of key ILO convention and labor law reforms, Nepal has made notable progress in aligning domestic law with international labor standard. Ratified 11 ILO conventions, including number 98, right to organized and collective bargaining, number 100, 111, 182, 105, 29, 144, and others. Reforms under the Labor Act 2017 and Labor Regulations 2018 have expanded worker protection, occupational health and safety, and gender equality provisions. In the process to ratify the ILO Convention 87, Freedom of Association and Right to Organize, and Convention 81 and Protocol 29. These commitments legally bind Nepal to uphold international labor rights, reinforcing democratic governance and human dignity at work. Now, I would like to highlight some points that governments must deliver in Doha and beyond. They are: first, one, guarantee democratic space for trade unions. Nepal's Constitution Article 34 recognize labor rights as fundamental, but implementation remains weak due to the bureaucratic interference, political instability, and union fragmentation. Governments must protect freedom of association and collective bargaining without political manipulation. Ensure trade unions have independent access to dialogue forums such as the CLAC, PLAC, and OIS boards. Guarantee labor inspection mechanism with sufficient funding and autonomy. Why it matters? Without an active, independent trade unions movements, democracy becomes hollow and unaccountable to workers. 2. Adopt and implementation just transition policies. Nepal is one of the most climate vulnerable countries. Global Climate Risk Index 2025 ranks Nepal among the top 10. Climate disasters like the floods and the landslides have destroyed jobs in agriculture, tourism, and transport. Workers from affected areas need retraining, relocation, and re-employment support. The government must integrate just transition framework into the climate change policy 2019 and the national determined contribution NDC 3. Create green employment programs in renewable energy, ecotourism, and sustainable agriculture. Formalize informal workers. Nepal's informal economy employs over 4.4 million workers out of the total labor force 5.4 million. The government should extend social protection schemes under the SSF to domestic agriculture and gig workers. Recognize platform and gig workers under the Labor Act to ensure collective rights and access to insurance. Bridge digital and gender gaps. Nepal faces stark inequalities in access to digital and vocational skills. Only 36% of women participants in the labor force CBS 2024. Less than 30% of rural youth have access to digital literacy or training. The government should extend technical and vocational education and training CTVT program and align them with the Digital Nepal Framework 2019. Incentivize women's participants in ICT, renewable energy, and green entrepreneurship. And 5, redistribute prosperity through fiscal and wage justice, which GDP growth is around 4.3%, fiscal year 2024-25. Inequality is widening. The richest 10% control nearly 40% of total income. So, government must reform tax policies to ensure progressive redistribution, enforce minimum wage compliance and regular reviews through tripartite mechanism, strengthen public investment in health, education, and rural jobs, financed by fair taxation on high-income group and industries. Lastly, Nepal has achieved commendable progress in recognizing decent work and building framework for social dialogue. But the gap between policy and practice remains. Governments must not act with urgency to protect workers' rights, formalize work, invest in youth, and deliver climate and
Thank you, brother. Can you please wrap? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, brother. I will go to Sister Shoba. Can you please tell us also from your point of view what we achieved so far and what you are expected from the government in Doha?
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. I think there has been lots of talk from my panelists around the need for the working class to be centered in this. What does it look like in terms of progressive policies around taxation, around our public strength, around countering the right? And so I really want to focus on the strong language around gender equality. We have one important language in the UN CSW 69, right? The political declaration earlier this year. And it kind of reflects, quite honestly, the work that the trade union movement has been working on globally. But we want to see a coherence between the different processes. And so within that, and just as a reminder, what we mean by that language, right? It's the commitment to care systems and care jobs. It was the call for investments in care and support systems and the need to, re-recognize, to reduce, to redistribute women's unfair burden of care work and to ensure, work-life balance and improved rights for care workers. It was also a commitment to decent work with the importance of labor rights, including the freedom of association and the fundamental principles of the rights of work. And the transition from an informal to formal economy, because we know with that comes labor rights, it comes, more dignity at work, and an ability to participate in the more formalization, such as pensions, such as other kind of programs that exist. We needed we were also pushing for the extension of social protection, right, in line with the ILO conventions and recommendations, and equal pay for equal pay for work of equal value and equal opportunities, and to end gender-based violence and harassment in the world of work. And we do think it's really important that, these wins and these, fundamental issues exist to help us not only in SDG 5 and SDG 8, but also are underlining into so much of the work. So we want to see a lot of that kind of work, making sure that that's also coming forward in the discussion that happens in Doha. And, we are seeing it on the ground here in Canada. We have many strikes across Canada right now. One is from our postal workers, which are on a national strike right now as the government is pushing to dismantle the post office and talking about it as if it's a company that needs to make profit, and not what it actually is, which is a service that evens out the access from rural folks to people who are in big cities, and as well in a country like Canada, very isolated Indigenous communities and Inuit communities are united by the post office. And so these folks are striking in order to have decent work, but also protect this fundamental service that we have in Canada. We also have teachers. 51,000 teachers are on strikes this week in Alberta. And, their number one issue is not pay. Their number one issue is access to education. What does it look like in a classroom? How many kids is that possible? Are we actually treating kids correctly? And we know that in this idea about the continued affordability crisis, when we're talking about healthcare and housing and climate crisis, and then we have a federal government who is only talking about austerity and how we have to need to cut that down, and how our public investments are seen as an expenditure and not an investment. We have these workers only because they have access to work their rights, taking strikes up on behalf of all of us. That is so very important. And we think that is very much related to these global conversations happening, when we talk about SDGs, because what it happens on in our local communities and our local workplaces is reflected in this global idea of what these rights look like. And, they can be taken away so quickly and so fast that's why we need to ensure that this discussion that is happening and that we're investing in this work that's going to happen so that we have these SDGs, because it cannot be overstated how important the idea that these development goals are based around human needs and human requirements and what it means for workers and communities versus what the push is, which is like we only talk about development as it means to a bank account and money, which really only helps a few people at the top and not the entire working class. And, I also can't talk about strikes in Canada without talking about our flight attendants who went on strike earlier this year from Air Canada. And again, they went because there was a standard where they didn't get paid for all the hours that they worked. And they took a really strong stand, and majority of women, many of them not even making a living wage by even like some of the lowest standards we have in Canada when we talk about a living wage. And they stood up together and they pushed back. And when the government wanted to use a piece of legislation that completely undermines the right to strike in Canada, they said, no, forget it. We're just going to keep going. And some people were saying, well, that's an illegal strike. And of course, we're pushing back going, it's not illegal because we have a constitutional right. We have an international right to strike. And so anything that the government invents to take that away is actually that's what's not legal. And so we'll continue to push back on that and protect the public services, protect what people need, and all in the lens of folks should be succeeding in this world. And we know that there's many pressures to undo that. So we know the SDGs have a meaningful way so that we can raise the floor for everybody. We can actually be forcing our governments to invest in people and communities as we transition from energy, as we transition, from, whether it's through peace talks and what does that mean for work. And when we talk about just transition, and when we talk about the formalization, when we talk about care work, when we talk about all these really fundamental things important to us, we want people to go to Doha. We want our governments to go there with that lens and come back with improved language, with improved standards, and with a buy-in and an investment in terms of what's happening that, because our solidarity within Canada and our solidarity here as the International Trade Union Movement is the way we're going to move forward and ensure that the working class has a strong voice and a way to succeed. So I just thank you so much for this conversation and leading us through it, Hein, because I think it is extremely important. And that's what success is going to look like.
Thank you. Thank you very much for you and for all our speakers for this very rich discussion. As we run out of time, I will open the floor for our participant for a few questions and comments for this interesting debate and rich information. So if you have any question, please raise your hand or write it on chat box, and we will give you the floor for a short intervention of 1 minute each.
And I see that Juan Somavia has raised his hand.
Yes. I can see. Can you help, please? Because I can't see that. Yeah.
Yes. So I think he can just take the floor. Juan, can you try to speak? I don't try now.
You have to unmute me.
Now you're unmuted. Welcome.
Okay, do you listen to me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take, if you excuse me, a little bit more than a minute, because I think that what I've heard is extremely important, and the projection of ITUC and the trade union movement globally is essential to the follow-up of the summit. Julia mentioned very strongly that this, surprisingly, I would say, the text that is going to be approved, the declaration, is a positive move in terms of confronting the backlash that we're living through in social issues. It restates the whole of I won't go again, Julia made it very clear. So we have a good document, we have a good product. and we can work on it and we can build on it. I want to congratulate the trade union movement because I think it was an ITUC and others in the countries have had a very important contribution in the result. The principal problem I see, and I'll go into very practical issues, and then I'll make some more global comments, is that the follow-up is relatively weak. The follow-up says, well, the Social Development Commission is going to be the instrument, but that's a secondary commission of ECOSOC. In 5 years from now, we'll see how things are going, etc. So I would just like to suggest to you that a key thing that we need to do from now to Doha is to insist on a clear follow-up of making 2026 the organizational year. That is not yet there. What does it mean, the organizational year? It means that governments take the commitment to organize in the course of the year the manner in which they're going to implement the agreements of the summit, of the declaration, and that they will report to the General Assembly at the end of the year, what the organization is. That the United Nations at the national level with the resident coordinators, organize themselves to help governments and in our case the tripartism in order to move forward. So you have an active, and then the UN has offices in about 120 something countries. Third, that the regional commissions look at it and say, okay, from our different regions, these are the issues. That the specialized agencies, funds, and programs that have a social mandate come together in order to see what is it that they're going to deliver. The ILO, obviously, but on education, it's UNESCO, it's the World Health Organization, etc. Come together and decide what is it that they're going to do and how are they going to work together in deliver a policy coherence and policy integration, which we're calling for the last 30 years, and yet it doesn't happen. And this time it has to happen because all social issues are multidimensional, and unless you treat them as multidimensional issues immediately, you won't, the moving forward is much more complicated. I am mentioning these things because I believe you can play a very important role in connecting with your countries, with your governments, and saying, look, this is great, it's a good text, but we need to make sure that we make 2026 a year of organization so that we can show that this thing is getting going. The reason I'm saying so is that this is the last year of a Secretary General, and you're going to have a new one. The last year of a Secretary General is not a dynamic year, let me call it that way. The danger that sort of in the course of 2026, this good text that's going to be approved just lies there. And then you have a new Secretary General that has to see how, what is it that you give prominence to, etc. May make this good document take some time to get going. If on the contrary, we make 2026 a year of organization, the new Secretary General will have something that is going on. There's a process, and just picks it up and pushes it forward. So I just want to mention that. I have a number of other more substantive comments. If there is a time at some point, I would like to make them, but I just wanted to make this one, which I think is very critical from a purely practical political point of view. Get the summit going versus, they approve this in Doha, new Secretary General arrives, let's see what we do about it. And if I have a little time later on, I would like to make some substantive points.
I don't know if there is other question.
Yes,
from
I
our
see
participants.
Eleuterio Benitez, and he's unmuted, so I
Sí,
can
¿me
take the floor.
oyen?
Sí, perfecto.
Bueno, quería hacer una precisión en un día tan importante como el de hoy, de la Jornada Mundial por el Trabajo Decente, y es desde la perspectiva de los trabajadores migrantes. El asunto del trabajo, el aspecto del trabajo va muy ligada a la condición de migrante. Los trabajadores de los diversos países migran en búsqueda de trabajo decente, el cual la gran mayoría no consigue en los países de llegada o de acogida. Entonces creo y estamos dando pasos en ese sentido, en el sentido de buscar formas organizativas de los propios migrantes en cuanto a la lucha por los derechos laborales. Creo que eso depende mucho de los propios migrantes como actores, pero también creo que los sindicatos debieran revisar sus políticas hacia la migración, o sea, tener un papel más activo, ver el papel de la OIT con relación a este gran volumen de trabajadores que son los trabajadores migrantes, y creo que ese es un tema muy importante que desde el punto de vista de los migrantes lo hemos venido planteando. Debemos pasar a una fase de mayor actividad, por cuanto la campaña, la guerra contra la migración al mundo, como todos sabemos, es muy fuerte. Nosotros en nuestra asociación somos una asociación de migración y cooperación internacional. Su nombre es Araguaney. Tiene en sus estatutos la promoción del trabajo decente de acuerdo a el concepto y los planes de la Organización Internacional del Trabajo. Eso quería decir.
Thank you very much.
I don't see more hands raised, Hind.
I don't know if you want to go back to Brother Somalia.
I think he
we
wanted
have
to
to
make
think
some more. So I think we have 2 minutes left if
Yes, okay.
Mr. Somavia
Yeah.
wants to come in again.
Mhm.
Juan,
So
if you want.
thank you so much. I want to refer to the significance of the trade union movement at this moment in history, if I can put it that way. We are in a world that has lost the capacity for dialogue, and that's why it's surprising that we have such a good document. But that is not the generalized situation globally. What the trade union movement represents and the ILO represents, it's the capacity for tripartism to come together and for social dialogue to function. In a world without dialogue, the significance of the experience of tripartism and social dialogue is absolutely central. And demonstrating how this work becomes not just an essential element to develop the interest of trade unions and workers, but it becomes an example to the world. So we are in fact moving into demonstrating the significance of what tripartism is and what social dialogue is. This, I put it in the context that when we moved from when we put the social and the decent work concept together, what was behind it was a historical demand from the ILO to say, look, labor is not a commodity. And yet in capitalism, labor is a commodity. And we made the point that decent work meant that you recognized from a societal and political point of view that work is source of personal identity and personal dignity, that work is a source of stability of families or the manner in which people want to live together, that work is a source of peace in the community because a community that has good work has much less violence and is much more stable, and finally, that the worker is a citizen and has a political opinion as a result of its work. If you look at work from that perspective, then the nature of work defines the quality of life, defines the quality of a society, and also the quality of democracy. And that's what decent work installed. So we installed it on the basis of the same ILO, the same conventions, except that we moved it into the context of its role in society rather than its role in production only. And that process is today extremely important to recover. because that's what the trade union movement represents. It represents a voice in society, as all of you were saying, but that is covered by the concept of decent work that produces a shift from work in production to work in society. And I just wanted to make that point. Another one which I think is important is what Julia said at the beginning. Why this relationship with the United Nations? And the fact is that this ultra-right attack on the United Nations is an attack on norms. And the basic foundation of the ILO and trade unionism is laws, is norms, is the capacity to operate because there is a recognition of its social function rather than simply the defense of the workers of a particular place. So a trade union performs a social function, and that element is central in this whole thing. But if you link this to the United Nations, people are saying today, well, the multilateralism is in crisis. It doesn't work, and that's the ultra-right attack on the UN. And we have to say, look, let's look at the different mandates, because on the peace and security mandate, no doubt, the Security Council is simply not functioning. The veto impedes any action in the Security Council. You're right. The United Nations has the Economic and Social Council, but you told the United Nations was told early on that economic and financial decisions were going to be taken in the Bretton Woods institutions and then the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So of course we don't have an influence on what is happening there, because you took you gave us an instrument and then you took it away. But if you look at the social, it's a totally different picture. Can we say that when you look at the ILO, UNESCO, World Health Organization, FAO, the funds and programs, UNDP, UN Women, etc., we are failing in the way that the Security Council is failing? The answer is no, very clearly no. And we continue to, and these are institutions that continue to be alive. The ILO has 105 years, has just celebrated 100 years, and it's certainly going to continue with its values. So this Doha product is a demonstration that on the social side, the United Nations system is not in crisis. It's perfectly clear, and it's saying so in this declaration of how we have to move forward in the future, on the basis of the Copenhagen Declaration and on the basis of the 2030 agenda. So this has a very important perspective, and I think that Julia made a very important point of highlighting that, in terms of showing that this criticism of the United Nations that is sort of all-englobing, if you apply it to the social issues and to our social mandates, the situation is not in crisis. On the contrary, and Doha proves it, we're thinking about the future and we're giving guidance in relation to the direction in which we have to move. I just wanted to make these comments because I think that it reinforces a reason to be in Doha. I have the intention of being there. I've been asked from different places to be there because the original summit, and let me finish with this, which is a purely personal comment. The first summit was an idea that I proposed. I was the ambassador of Chile to the United Nations. After a long struggle to get rid of Pinochet, after a long struggle to recover democracy, we had a dictatorship in Chile, which was not a practice of the Chilean political system, but it happened to us also. And we recovered democracy, and I was the first ambassador of the Chilean democracy coming back to the UN and proposed this. It was a crazy idea at the moment when I proposed it. It looked like, but it happened to touch what was going on, and what was going on was very interesting. The American dream had its problems. The European welfare society was already running into problems, and we see that has developed. Japan had a situation in which you had, you could plan for life employment in enterprises. All of those things, were not working.
Thank you.
And the developing.
Thank you, brother.
Sorry.
unfortunately run out of time.
I
Yes.
get
But
excited
it's
with
very
all of these
interesting,
things.
and I totally agree and
Yeah.
share with you your concern on UN system and the relation with the trade union
Yeah.
movement and UN system. Very interesting also
Yeah.
to share your story. Thank you very much for you and for all our participants and colleague and speakers for the rich, really. Yeah.
Let me just say one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Copenhagen was the biggest meeting of heads of state and prime ministers in the history of the UN. Just to say that it was the thing to do, the thing to happen, and the Doha refers systematically to Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So it simply changed the way that politically you dealt with social issues in the UN. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry that I took too much time.
What we heard today is clear. Democracy must deliver. It's not just a slogan, but a thought, concrete action that guarantee decent work, equality, and social justice for every worker. So the incoming Doha Social Summit will be a defining moment for us to reaffirm that social development begins with the rights, dignity, and voice for all workers and people. Today's discussion shows that across the world, Africa, Europe, Asia, and Americas, we share all one commitment to build a world where democracy and social justice go hand in hand. So let's carry this message forward and one united trade union movement fighting for a new social contract grounded in democracy, inclusion, and peace. Before I close, I will give the floor to Julia for a wrap up for this interesting seminar. Julia,
Thank you very much, and I'm not taking more of your time. See you in Doha, and for those of you that will not be in Doha, we will share all the information on social media, on our website, so a lot more is still to come. But thank you very much for your contribution, and bye-bye. Take care.